Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for our pet webinar. I am joined by an amazing panel, and I'm so happy that we're going to be focusing today on your pet's gut health and learning more about how you can increase that diversity and terrain for your your pet's gut health. So as we get started, just little house rules, letting you all know that if you have questions, you can pop them in our Zoom chat. So we have people that are answering questions as they come in. The last 15 minutes, we're hoping to have some time for take some questions as well. So if questions don't get answered there, you can always email them over to us at info@intelligenceofnature.com, and we can always answer questions there as well. So I am joined today by Rob Ryan, the founder of Gussy's Gut. He's going to be co-hosting this webinar with me. So Rob Ryan, would love to hear from you and for the topic of our discussion today.
Well, thank you very much, Rebekah. Thank you for inviting me here. So my story briefly is that I run a superfoods company. We ferment 19 superfoods, and we approach gut health from a whole foods point of view. And so I'm really just so happy to be here. I'm also a very long-term customer of Ion, both myself and my dog. I often tell people ask us why we don't put fulvic and humic acid in our products. And I say to them, well, we could, but we don't think we could do it any better than Ion already does it. And so partnering with you guys really means a lot to me. And I think in a lot of ways, we complete some circle in gut health, both products. I think they're very complementary. And so I'm just so happy to be here for this webinar on critical factors of gut health.
Great. Thank you, Rob. So nice to have you. Also introducing our wonderful panel today, two wonderful vets that I've worked with and had the pleasure of working with for years now, Dr. Katie Kangas and Dr. Odette Suter. So thank you both for being here with us today. So let's start the conversation off with looking at, some of what is affecting our pets' gut health, ways that maybe that's showing up for our pets, and kind of wanting to learn more as well of how we can offset that damage that we're seeing and help rebuild that microbiome. So I know, Dr. Katie, you've done a lot of background research in this, and we've worked on projects together in the past. I would love to hear from you and your perspective and what you've seen both personally and in clinic and some of these factors that affecting our pets.
Thank you. And I'll start out too by adding to Rob's great comment that I have been an Ion user for myself and my dog and all of my patients for years now, after I actually met Dr. Zach Bush in person, and he really inspired me to dig into all this information. And I was already a holistic integrative vet at the time, so this was a big interest to me. And I've really, grown through the recent years in not only focusing on gut health, but now on toxins and glyphosates, et cetera. And as you mentioned, we've worked on projects together. And one of the projects that I did was I actually wrote an article for a peer-reviewed veterinary journal on glyphosate and the impacts of glyphosate on animals, humans, the soil, the planet, et cetera. And I think it was the first of its kind in a veterinary journal. Most veterinarians know very little about, most holistic and integrative veterinarians know quite a bit, but most conventional, standard veterinarians know very little. And they're still really, recommending and encouraging people to feed the typical dry food processed diets. And anybody who really knows a lot about nutrition and whole body health, of course, that's the biggest thing. And you ask about, what affects gut health. The number one thing that affects gut health is diet, but there's, many other things. So diet, obviously the ingredients, processed foods have their whole thing, because anytime anything's processed, it adds more inflammation to the body. And then you have toxins coming in, which glyphosate is a biggie, but it's not the only one. But it is rampant in pet food. So we'll talk about that too. But glyphosates and other toxins, toxins in water, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Another big issue for the gut is antibiotics, medications, pain meds, antacids. I mean, all these things cause disruption to digestion and even disruption to the, the gut barrier, the intelligent barrier and the tight cellular junctions, which is obviously a big key of what we want to talk about. So these things are getting affected just constantly by so many things in the modern world for both humans and pets. But oftentimes pets are faced with even more of these challenges because of the typical foods that they eat, standard pet foods. And then there's a lot more for the average pet, especially dogs, maybe not quite as much for indoor cats, but for dogs and horses, et cetera, there is a lot of environmental exposure to these things that are, challenging the gut and definitely the intelligent barrier of the gut, leading to issues.
And for those that are joining that are on the call, glyphosate is the largest sprayed antibiotic that we're exposed to every day. So it was under patent as Roundup, and now that it's off patent, it's glyphosate, and it's used in a lot of these fillers that are being used in pet food, such as wheat and corn. It's heavily sprayed and in our water system as well. So what that does to the gut barrier that we study with ION is it breaks apart the tight junctions of that gut lining. And when those junctions break apart, that body then essentially it's leaky gut under a microscope. That gut barrier now is open, and toxins then pass through, larger food particles. And that barrier, when it comes down, is like the first domino that falls that can later on lead to more chronic illnesses, starting at first with just inflammation across that barrier.
You got it. And I love to explain to my clients that that barrier is like your gatekeeper. That is your gatekeeper. That is the intelligent barrier that is, has the intelligence to know what we want to allow into our body, into our systemic, circulation for the needs that we have, our food, and fuel and everything. And it's supposed to have obviously those tight cellular junctions that are keeping out any toxins or unwanted bacteria or other, particles and debris. And once that barrier is disrupted and the gatekeeper is no longer able to do its job well, i.e. leaky gut, then yes, all these things are coming into systemic circulation. And lo and behold, about 70% of the immune system is in a big, long lymphatic tract that has a name, the GALT, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So this big tract of immune tissue is right behind that gut barrier. So once that gut barrier is leaky, the first thing that gets onslaughted by all this stuff rushing through is the immune system. And so then it reacts and it gets into like overdrive or hyperdrive because all this stuff is being bombarded with that it's not supposed to have to deal with in an appropriate situation. And so now you're creating antibodies to food, and you might get food intolerance and food allergy, et cetera. But importantly, then it's just setting the stage for not only chronic overimmune stimulation, but chronic inflammation. And, we go back to the wisdom of Hippocrates that all disease starts in the gut. And now modern medicine is realizing this is absolutely true. And from brain diseases to autoimmune to chronic anything, we're looking at the gut. And so that is a big piece of whole body wellness for everybody, but definitely for our veterinary patients, our animal patients as well. And many people come to me seeking help specifically for gut issues. And, as a quick side note, skin and allergy issues are also huge for a lot of domestic pets. And that used to be said to be the number one reason why pets would come to their veterinarian was for skin and allergies, which, by the way, is connected to the gut. There's a big skin gut connection, as we know, and immune throughout that. But now I think gut issues are just as big. I mean, they're like tandem, hand in hand, but so many chronic issues for animals and people are really, on the rise, obviously, because of all these factors that play into it. And then the microbiome becomes involved. And I know Dr. Odette Suter, who has a big niche in expertise there, and she published article or has one coming out on that. And so she'll add a lot on the microbiome, but that gets into the whole mix too. And I know that, a lot of the mechanisms of ION are supporting that. And so it's such a wonderful tool for me to have in my toolbox to share with my clients. And, the human clients start taking ION, and then the pets start taking ION. And it's, such a asset for addressing root conditions. I always tell people, the gut is the root of chronic inflammation. And there are multiple things we can do in adjusting the diet and supporting in other ways, but sealing that gut barrier is an instrumental thing that we can do to help the body in every way. So.
And as far as glyphosate exposure, I know, Katie, you have mentioned to me before a pretty striking statistic on how much higher the glyphosate level is in pet food versus even what we're being exposed to. And humans are being exposed to a higher level in our urine concentration of glyphosate than is legal in EU water sources. So it's a huge exposure to humans, but tell us a little bit about the pets, how much more glyphosate they're also getting.
I'm glad you brought that up. And just to give people a frame of reference, when I did this published article and did all the research and showed this, is that they did a study from 1995 to 2015 in humans, in the, human urine. And so over a 20-year span, they saw like a 35-fold increase of the amount of glyphosate in human urine, 35 times more glyphosate in urine than we had the 20 years prior. And now it's exponentially more since then. So, but importantly, in contrast with with animals, so there are independent labs that have done this research. HRI Labs is one of them that has done a great job in really identifying the impact of glyphosate and other toxins on our health and our planet. And they have studied many animals, including wildlife, farm animals, dogs, cats, horses, etc. Dogs have the highest glyphosate out of any animal ever tested. So, and shockingly, at least at the time that this came out several years ago now, the average American dog had 32 times more glyphosate in their urine than the average American human. That is shocking. And when you see it on a graph, the human little red bar is like way here, down here. And then cats are about half. Cats are 16 times higher. Dogs are 32 times higher. And horses are 29 times higher than humans. And so for kitties, it's probably because they have more indoor time than outdoor time. But most importantly, they eat less plant material because cats are true obligate carnivores. Dogs are more omnivore-ish, although, they're more like scavenging carnivores, but they eat a lot of plant material in the average, commercial pet food. And so one of the things I would love everybody to get out of this discussion today is that the types of foods that are included in the ingredient panels in dog foods are often loaded with glyphosate. And even if the food says grain-free, it often has actually higher levels of carbohydrate than foods that even potentially have grains in them. So by no means does grain-free equal low carb, diet. But importantly, even without grains, peas, potatoes, lentils, all these wheat as well, they are high, and oats, high levels of glyphosates, and even more than corn and soy. Because corn and soy, the original GMO crops, they're sprayed in the beginning of the season because they've been engineered to handle the toxin so they don't die, but the weeds die. Well, with these other crops that aren't GMO, so people think that non-GMO means it's clean, and it doesn't. These crops are heavily sprayed with glyphosate unless they're labeled organic. And so these crops that are often in pet food ingredients, they get sprayed at the end of harvest season because they're not GMO. So then they use glyphosate for almost a different reason. They're using it to desiccate and dry it up real quick so they can harvest it at a very specific time. And then there's a lot of glyphosate residue when it's consumed as opposed to corn and soy. So definitely you're getting it from corn and soy, or your pets are, but they're getting even more from all these foods that are put in high amounts in most pet foods. So it's a big deal. They're getting a lot. And glyphosate is water soluble. So it is being excreted in the urine, as we mentioned in the testing. It's doing a lot of damage to the kidneys too, because the kidney tubules have those same tight cellular junction, barriers as the gut. So the gut is getting affected and damaged, and the kidneys are as well. We've seen a lot more kidney disease, bladder cancers, all kinds of stuff in our pets rising as well. So I appreciate the Ion product for kidney health too. So anybody that comes to me, any of my patients with kidney issues, bladder issues, I think of ion as well, because it is
Yeah.
very helpful there.
It's amazing because the tight junctions, when we look, it's tight junctions not only of your gut lining, it's affecting the tight junctions of your vascular system, of your organs, of your kidneys. So within taking ion, within 16 minutes, those junctions go tight, and they stay tight even under that assault of glyphosate. Not that we should not be avoiding it in every way that we can, right? But it is helping to protect you from some of that. But let's shift over to the microbiome of it with Dr. Odette, and tell us a bit, Dr. Odette, about how this glyphosate and these toxins and exposures are also affecting the microbiome.
Yeah, so glyphosate originally has been used as an antibiotic to kind of clean out some drain pipes and such. And so because it's an antibiotic, it will also affect the microbes in the gut and kill them and create imbalances. Some microbes may be better able to tolerate, and then they overgrow, whereas the ones that are more sensitive, they decrease in numbers. And so we end up with potentially more pathogenic microbes that also then affect the gut lining, and contributing to leaky gut. But the gut microbes, they have so many different functions. And so if we kill them, all of these amazing functions are being altered and diminished. So for example, the gut microbiome originally, when it first gets implanted into the, puppy or kitten, it helps to train the immune system. So if we already have a load of toxins that have impacted that microbiome, or mom's microbiome wasn't great to begin with, or the puppy and kitten was kept in a sterile environment, they will not develop a good microbiome. And as a result, then they're not training the immune system properly. And then the immune system kind of goes haywire. And so then if you add more toxins, you just make it worse, basically. But the microbiome is also there to train the nervous system. So in the first few weeks and months of life, it is helping to train the nerves, and so that the animals can behave appropriately. And it really does that by communicating tightly with all the nerve endings that are on the other side of that gut lining that Dr. Kangas talked to us about. And so the microbes have a lot of communication that they're doing with all these cells in that neighborhood. They communicate with the gut lining, the cells of the gut lining. They help promote maturation of that intestinal lining. They promote health. They provide them nutrients that give them energy so that they can do their thing. But then they also communicate with the nervous system, with the immune system. They also help with hormonal balancing. They also help with detoxification. So they take whatever may be in the food that's not supposed to go in there, or whatever has been dumped by the liver and the bile into the GI tract. They help with these toxins to move them out. So they just have so many different functions that are so important for gut health and overall health. So yeah, they're quite amazing. And so when we give them glyphosate, poison them with all kinds of other toxins, that's obviously when things go wrong. And just like Dr. Kangas mentioned, and Rob as well, I love ion. I've been using it for, ever since you guys started having it, I think. I've been using it for all my patients, on a regular basis. I take a gulp of it every time I eat as well. So I'm really amazed, at how well it works, and glad to have this really simple yet very powerful, but so easily tolerated supplement to give to my patients. And just like Dr. Kangas, I also got a chance to meet Zach Bush, which was amazing. You actually helped me make the connection, Katie. So thanks for that. I had a chance to interview him for my Dog Detox Summit, so that was really amazing. And he's just so inspiring in everything he does. So it's such an honor to be here and share some of that information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Odette. And, Ion, I love how Rob has said, he said it's good dirt, right? It's good dirt. And that's what he tells people. And why are we even like, why do we need other dirt than our dirt? And that really comes down to how we farmed the land, and we've really been killing the soils. So the soils don't have the nutrient and mineral density that it once did. And the plants that we grow in that soil don't have the nutrient density because they would get it from the soil. So when we've depleted the soil, over-tilled, over-farmed, and then we've thrown all this antibiotic on it, it's really depleting our food sources. So, ion is from ancient soil. It's from 60 million year old soil. It is made mostly, it's fulvate molecules. So fulvates are different than fulvic or humic acid in that fulvates have open oxygen binding sites that are attracted to metals, to minerals. So it's grabbing the minerals in our food, even in our water that we're drinking, and it's helping to deliver those into our cells. So it's increasing that nutrient delivery aspect. Ion with those same binding sites also clears cellular waste from the cell. So it's removing the waste from that cell. So it's a wonderful, really foundational product that helps to support that tight junction integrity and is literally a delivery system for nutrients. But when I go to pet stores and I walk down the aisles, most of those aisles are really filled with like dead kibble, with this, toxin loaded dry kibble that we're told, we need to keep our pet on the same one forever and ever. And I think of animals and their natural habitat and being wild, and how, looking at our animals, how can we rewild their gut? What are some tips that you all may have on how to boost that diversity and terrain for the pets after we've protected from those toxins?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of what we've been doing is sterilizing everything. We live in a world where we fear microbes, where we don't quite understand how amazing they are in their function and how they got us from being nothing to evolving to being multicellular organisms like, us humans and our animals. And so these microbes are essential. And if we continuously sterilize them, we basically eradicate what made us. So we need to be really careful because they're also extremely important for evolving us, because things are changing so quickly. And a multicellular organism cannot adapt very quickly to things because it's like this heavy machinery. If you have like a freight train and you're trying to get it started, how long that takes, right? They just nail along. And so with the microbes, they're the ones that can change, like within, I think, 20 minutes or something, they can change into something else and adapt to whatever the environment is. And if we have all of this diversity of microbes, they can do the adapting so that then the body can actually survive whatever is going on with the environment. So it's really important when we talk about rewilding that we remove and stop the killing. That's the first step, that we stop that killing and that we become friends with these microbes because they are helping us. If for example, your dog has Clostridium perfringens in their gut, it doesn't mean you have to go kill it because it has a function as well. But we just need to add other players as well so that they can all work together, because otherwise it's kind of like eliminating all the, I don't know. Okay, I was going to go into more of a race thing. Maybe I shouldn't go there, but let's just say we only have dogs and there's no prey anymore. There are no rabbits or no cows or nothing else. That's not going to work. We need all of that ecology. We need all of these different species. We need all these different plants. We need this huge diversity. And so part of that diversity on a microscopic level are the microbes. And we need to make sure that we restore them, that we nurture them, that we feed them, that we love them and appreciate them, because then they can really, really help us.
Preach.
Great.
Amen.
And then, oh yeah, are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I could add to that, such a great intro to that whole discussion around that. And then thinking of wilding the diets, one of the phrases I love to describe pet foods to my clients is a species appropriate diet or an evolutionary appropriate diet. And we know that dogs and cats did not evolve eating kibble. Nobody did, and so thinking as much as we can to as much that the budget of the family, the lifestyle of the family can get to fresh food and even low processed food, moving, a step from kibble into dehydrated foods or freeze dried or air dried foods, hopefully with at least some fresh foods. And there's a lot of fresh food, easy things that can be used as toppers, or fresh food diets can be, purchased and used as well. So I think getting more towards species appropriate with the items in the food, less carbs, more protein-based things, good vegetable matter, some healthy fats, those kinds of things are so important. When there's less carbs, a carnivore microbiome would also be, supported better to be more natural. And when there's natural food items going in. And I think the other thing besides going more fresh and going more ingredient appropriate is also variety is key. And this is something that I love to bust the myth that's been long-standing forever. And many veterinarians have perpetuated this, conventional, we're trained, to feed kibble and et cetera, and notions are finally just changing. But people have been under the mindset for decades that you should feed your pet the exact same thing every day forever, or they might get an upset stomach, which of course is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you feed them the same thing for 2 straight years and then they get something different and then they get a digestive upset, it's like, see, they can only eat that food. And it's like, well, if you ate the same thing exactly every day, you would have no adaptability. And we want to be metabolically flexible and adaptable, but what we really want to is an expansion and variety and diversity of nutrients. And I love to tell my clients that if you are feeding your pet a very narrow diet all the time, that's all they eat, they're going to have a narrow microbiome. So just like what Dr. Odette was saying is, loving these, I love that, loving these bugs and supporting them with good foods, variety of foods, and species appropriate ingredients. And gosh, just that alone will just profoundly impact pet health. Right there.
Yeah, and just the fact, that in the wild they're eating outside, right? They eat with the dirt included, and dogs, especially if they've had enough, they go dig a hole, put the stuff that they didn't eat in there and cover it up, and then come back a few days later, and it's all fermented, has maggots in it and all sorts of things. So you add more diversity, and that's not to gross everybody out, but that's just the reality. And so that's why it's so amazing that Rob Ryan with Gussy's Gut has that fermentation process that you can easily add to the food. But, I as you were talking, Dr. Katie, I was remembering a dog who used to always throw up, wasn't really hungry. It's a Belgian Shepherd. And I was just trying to figure out what to do for this dog. And because I was taking care of her, I decided, well, let me just see if I give her a piece of a rabbit, and just put it outside and let her chew on it. And that worked wonders because it was really mimicking nature. She ate off the dirt. She had to chew on it for a while. She walked around it, to kind of, do her dance like they do, right? When they eat things. And then there was this raven that wanted in on the feast. And so she had to constantly be on the watch, that thing wasn't going to
natural, primordial.
Exactly. Yeah. It was really mimicking nature. And I think that the more we can mimic what nature is doing, the healthier they can be and the more natural things can be. And of course, with this dog, she stopped vomiting. So that was really a plus. But, you learn by watching them, by imitating what they would do in nature.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from you, Rob, on that and your take on, the food, the pet food, and also ferments and how you see this balancing.
So I have the unique pleasure not only to meet and work with great vets like Dr. Suter and Dr. Kangas, but on our board of advisors, really my business partner is Dr. Ian Billinghurst. And he is by many considered to be the father of raw. So popularizing that notion, and everything that they've said here, the doctors have said here, is completely true. I know for some people thinking piece of rabbit, that's libelous. I mean, that's like, you're in big trouble if you do that. No, unless the gut is really damaged in an animal, you can work up to it. But raw food is what they need, and giving dogs what they need is absolutely key. I want to do a plug for something that's completely free that I'd love people to check out. So Dr. Suter is an author in this magazine. It's called Dog Microbiome Magazine. It's just go to dogmicrobiomemagazine.com, read Dr. Suter's amazing article. And Dr. Bush, also Dr. Zach, also wrote, I think it's the first article in there on glyphosate. So it's a free resource. I hope you enjoy it. And, it's all about the microbiome of dogs. Sorry for the cat folks. We don't have a magazine for them yet, but it's definitely where we start with. I think Dr. Kangas said that, starting with nutrition is absolutely the right way to go. And I think where we've gone, there's just been such a number done on us by companies and social posts and all kinds of things where we think that we always want to start off on probiotics. But if you don't get the nutrition right, there's not a probiotic that's going to save you. There's just not. And, Dr. Suter brilliantly outlines in this magazine how many exact species are that we currently know of in the dog's microbiome. Look at some of these facts; they'll blow you away. So, I just appreciate being in this discussion, because for a lot of people that are on kibble, their dogs are on kibble. We look at lentils and we think, oh gosh, isn't that great? It's not wheat, it's not corn, but it's lentils. It's, you'll be really hard pressed to find organic lentils in any kibble. And then I just want to add one last thing. When you cook these ingredients, and I've done this, for example, if you put chicken protein into a kibble, it reacts differently in the gut and the dog and the cat than raw chicken, raw rabbit, etc. So back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So cooked is going to be, anything that's especially heated at high temperature is going to really change and degrade the nutrients. And so, it really is. I mean, a lot of people look at kibble and say, it's lifeless food because it's been so altered. And then even the inflammatory reactions like the Maillard reaction and, advanced glycation end products, AGEs, that get created when you're heavily heating protein and carbs together too, it causes a whole nother, issue that, it expands into, even more problem. But just suffice to say that just like humans, we're taught well in today's world that the fresher food you can eat, the more whole food stuff you can identify from the earth, nature's food, that is really healthy. If it's in a box and it has tons of ingredients that you can't pronounce and it's processed, probably not as good for you. And the really ironic thing is we all know that to be true for ourselves, but the veterinary system still is promoting, for the large part, processed food. And it goes completely against the intuitive knowledge that we have that can't be as good as fresh food. Now, processed food clearly is more convenient, and that's a big issue for humans too, who eat a lot of processed foods because of convenience. But as more and more people get more enlightened and aware of being proactive for their pets' health and their own health, I love when people want to be proactive for their pets' health and they come to me and we work through all this and they're like, I need to do this for myself. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get healthier. And I'm like, yes, this is great. Sometimes people start with themselves and then they're like, oh, I have to do this for my pet. And sometimes people start with their pets. They're like, I'm going to do this for myself. But these are the same concepts that support all of our health for all living beings, is moving away from processed food, toxic ingredients to the best that we can. I love to tell my clients, take some pressure off. You can't live in a squeaky clean world. We don't have one right now, but we can do the best we can to avoid things once we're educated, once we have the awareness, we can avoid as best we can and, and add in other good tools like ion and other things that really help get us to that next level of health, regardless of the world we live in.
I keep coming back to our hashtag with Ion of breathe your biome, like getting out in diverse environments, like not just our food, but also getting out in diverse environments and breathing different environments. And with dogs, if they're going to a doggy park, every day or every couple days and rolling around in a, kind of city park where it's sprayed with glyphosate, versus going out by a river or creek and running through the mud and sniffing other dogs. I think about that too with dogs, sniffing other dogs. I'm like, are they exchanging microbiome right now? Like, are they leveling up their microbiome? For us at IOM, we're like hugs, hugs, hugs. It's increasing your microbiome in that way. And dogs are in their sniffing abilities as well. Getting out in diverse environments.
Yeah, I mean, dogs particularly are also good at seeking out the right source of microbes that they need. I have a couple of clients who have multiple dogs, and the dog that has a bit more of an unhealthy gut will only eat the poop from certain dogs and not all of them. So they are very good at sniffing out what they need.
Yeah.
And so if we allow them to do that, out in nature as well, they will automatically sort of help, try to restore their microbiome in the process and add more diversity, which is really incredible. So, they have an intelligence that surpasses ours, obviously, on some level anyway.
And Rob, tell everyone about Gussy's Gut a bit and, using that as a source as well to help increase that diversity.
Yeah, I mean, so we try to address the spear of the food pyramid that Dr. Billinghurst talks about, which is that stinky, revolting, items that dogs love to eat. And that could be organs, it could be poop, as Dr. Suter just mentioned. It could be things that, we all know that dogs can bury bones and then dig them up and eat them after they've been fermented. And so we handle that little segment, a very little segment of the diet. Dogs are caprophagic. So they do normally, like most people, for obvious reasons, are revolted when they see their dog eating poop. Nobody wants a dog licking their face after they've eaten some other animal's poop. But it is one of the best things they can do. And Dr. Billinghurst even famously said that even if your dog were to eat the poop of a kibble-fed dog, the poop is healthier than what went in the front of the dog. The poop is actually more healthy. So I would say that what we believe in at Gussy's Gut is, even though we deal in probiotics because of the fermentation process, we believe in fibers, so prebiotics, and all from natural plant sources. Everything that's on our label is all that we use. We use Redmond's real salt. That's mined out of the mountains, the purest, highest mineral content salt you can find. And then we also think that part of this discussion is about diversity and terrain. On the terrain side, we believe that fibers, but also polyphenols and phytochemicals, those contribute a lot more than they're given credit for. We just have, we have these oversimplified discussions in the media and in marketing. But, I just would encourage, if somebody feels lost in this discussion, I just would really encourage you to get a hold of a Dr. Katie Kangas, a Dr. Odette Suter, get their courses, get a consult if they will offer it to you. I'm telling you, it will save you years on your pet's health and your learning curve and your frustration and your money wasting. It's just having the right people in your corner as your part of your dog's health team just is everything. It matters a lot. And you can ferment on your own. You don't need to buy Gussy's Gut. What we try to do is something that's optimized. We have 19 superfoods. It's honestly very difficult. It's very hard to do. I was test case number one. It's very hard to do in your kitchen. But what we recommend is everybody get on the fermentation wagon. Ferment something. You can ferment all sorts of things. Kefir, eggs. You can bury meat if you really want to go crazy. But so, and We're a big proponent of it. We think it's really important for your animals.
And I love, like, with ferments, you're getting, and you mentioned fiber as, like, we call it the unsung hero of gut health. With the ferment, you've got the fiber and the microbes. And the fiber is, I know, Rob, you've mentioned this, fiber is like the scaffolding in your gut microbiome. So it's literally it's creating a home to house this and to feed and to allow to support that flourishing microbiome. So you're getting like the 1-2 punch there with the ferment and the fiber, because you're bringing in the scaffolding for it, the food for it, and the beautiful, array of microbes. And as far as fermenting, there are definitely things to learn about as you start turning your gears on, food for your animal. There are definitely people that are go-getters, right? They're like, I'm going to do it all on my own, and I'm going to spend 3 hours a week making my dog's food, which is wonderful. I've met people that can do that, and it's manageable. But I think it's really important as well for it to be something that you can stick with, approachable and sustainable. So, that is one thing with Gussy's Gut, or you find a pre-made, great option. If that's going to help you stick with it and support that pet's health, all the better. And then you're going to have, the diehards are like, I'm going to do this myself, which is wonderful. The homesteaders, right? That they can do it all on their own.
And Rebekah, if I could just add to that, those folks are going to do it really right. They're going to go raw, local farms. Local is always great. It's optimal. But the folks that are dabbling are going to go to the grocery store, get the pasteurized thing with the additional probiotics added to it, which is fine, but raw, all as much as you can get raw, organic at least, or regenerative. Now you're talking.
I love that. And using local farms as well. So with that, Rob, do you go to a local farm and say, hey, what would you ask for?
Yeah, so you go to your farmer's market. For a lot of people, that's pretty easy. And I would ask for raw, or if they are regenerative, or organic or biodynamic. You can just Google those terms. All of those are good. But I'll tell you what, the highest, the God tier, I call it, the top level is regenerative raw. And then it goes to maybe biodynamic raw, organic raw, conventional pasteurized. That's the junk tier, I call it.
And do you
even better would be if you do it in your garden. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Odette.
Well, I was just going to add, even better if you grow it in your own garden, because you add a bunch of love to it,
Amen.
I love that, because you're also bringing in vegetables. So how do we bring in and incorporate vegetables with the raw?
Oh, there's many ways, and there's going to be vegetables in the Gussy's Gut, which is so amazing. There are other brands of products that do like little vegetable slurries and things for pets. Green Juju is a well-known one. They actually have a couple fermented, fresh products as well. And a lot of people will do their own. And if any veggies in my fridge are starting to, and even if they're not, but definitely if they're just starting to wilt or whatever, throw them in a food processor. I throw some ginger in there and, all kinds of different veggies. And I make a little veggie mush for my dog too. I haven't gotten into the step where I ferment on my own, but I love Gussy's Gut. Just started using that for my dog recently, and she absolutely loves it. It's such a great product because it's so user-friendly. And as Rob said, it's the upper tier of all these nutrients and ingredients that a lot of people would probably not be able to take the time or effort to do. So it offers a really user-friendly match, but anything that people can do to just add a little extra nutrient density and love. I love how Dr. Odette brought that up. Anything you do besides just pouring kibble in a bowl for your dog gives you a little more opportunity to infuse some intention and love and creation into your pet's food, which energetically actually makes a difference. But the fun thing I can share is that I do have a list of foods that I love to call beneficial foods or medicinal foods that are easy to add into a pet's dish, no matter what the main diet is at that time. And I give this to all my clients, on usually the first initial consultation. And my typical, phrase that I include in it is, my prescription list for your pet is going to start with food. And I always tailor it and customize it to what's going on with the pet. If they have digestive issues or digestive weakness or something, then we keep the list really small and we start with some strategic things. But my list contains things that many of them are known to be gut healing foods, but all nutrient dense things and fermented things. And so the list that I love to encourage people to slowly, implement if it works for their pet are things like bone broth and kefir or raw dairy, raw milk, goat milk, etc. Fiber is on my list, absolutely. Free range eggs, sardines and mackerel and anchovy and salmon, omega-3 rich items. I have MCT and ghee as healthy fats on my list as well. And then I also recommend glandulars as, organ meats. A lot of commercial pet foods, unless a lot of the raw foods do this well, but even some of them could use maybe a little more organ meat content. But in an evolutionary in the wild, dogs really pre-select for a lot of organ meat, in their prey when they're eating a prey. And organs or glands are very nutrient dense and very appropriate to help the tissues repair in the body and stay healthy, etc. So organ meats now can be done easily for a lot of people as toppers or treats because there's a lot of freeze-dried and air-dried things like heart and liver and tripe and lung and stuff like that. Or you can add fresh. And obviously the raw food diets include percentages of organ meat too. So, but anyway, that's a nice little list. Fermented foods is a huge piece on them. And, that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, the only thing with organ meats, just as a cautionary thing, maybe not too much liver, because I have patients or clients who give handful of liver treats and then the copper levels go sky high in those dogs. So just careful with that. And when you're looking at, giving organ meats, what I like to do is just think about how big is that organ meat, that organ in a particular prey animal, like for example, a rabbit. And, depending on the size of the rabbit, are they going to eat the whole thing? Are they only going to eat half of it because they're going to be full? So just kind of keep it at that with the things that you give so that you don't end up overdoing it.
Yeah, thank you for adding that because that is so important. Organ meats in smaller amounts, like it would represent in a prey, just as Dr. Odette said. But all the foods that I mentioned, there's appropriate amounts per day. So, obviously I support my clients with those, with those volumes, depending on the weight of the pet, the body size of the pet and their digestion. But just for people to get an idea of the healthy kinds of foods that they can easily add, but volumes matter. And so, that is an important thing. And so thank you for adding that, Dr. Odette.
And especially when you're thinking back to where we're looking at that kind of mono-cropped meal with the dried kibble, when you look at even in humans, restricting diets, often our digestion, we stop making certain enzymes to break the food down. So if we eliminate something, often people will then become much more sensitive to it later because their body was like, oh, I don't need to produce those enzymes to digest it anymore. So it's almost like to rebuild, it seems like maybe starting small and incorporating things over time to make that transition over seems like it could be a good idea. Maybe somebody doesn't have to take it all on at once and can starting by to incorporate these things to start building that microbiome in that gut.
Yeah, I mean, especially nowadays, a lot more animals are very sensitive. You used to be able to just switch their diet from one day to another without a problem. But nowadays, with a lot of the sensitive GI tracts, especially all those doodle breeds tend to be more prone to that. You have to be going a little bit more slowly and also adding in what may not be part of the food, like enzymes. You mentioned enzymes, Rebekah, because a lot of these foods have been processed. Even the raw foods, if you get them frozen from somewhere, they've been processed and they don't have the same amount of enzymes because enzymes are very sensitive. They don't survive all that well. So when, for example, an animal would be catching a prey somewhere, they would get tons of enzymes eating it fresh. But as we process it, the less enzymes are in there, and that makes it more difficult to then digest for the animals, which that also then leads to leaky gut, inflammation in the gut. because things are not being processed, so it starts to ferment and create a mess in there. So adding some of that, and I know Dr. Katie, you talked a lot about stomach acid as well in your lecture at the AHVMA, so I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that. Thank you. It's a great intro to just reiterating what Dr. Odette said, that digestive enzymes are so useful, and you can get natural digestive enzymes in foods, or you can buy digestive enzyme products, especially if your pet has a lot of digestive issues or they're older, in older age. That can really help to digest those foods down, because as she said, when they break down to the small molecular components they're supposed to be for absorption, that alleviates a lot of inflammation in the gut. And when the stomach has proper levels of acidity and enzymes, especially when you're a carnivore, dogs and cats are designed to have very acidic stomachs. We all do. But because they eat primarily meat and protein, they rely on good acidity levels in their stomach in order to digest their food appropriately. And something that we see a lot in all ages of dogs, but definitely it's a trend for all of us as we age, humans too, that we start to secrete less and less stomach acid, and that really challenges digestion, period, but definitely challenges protein digestion. So one of the things I love to do for my patients is to determine, do they have any upper GI symptoms, and supporting good stomach environment, good stomach acidity and enzymes because that's where the start of digestion process starts, is in the stomach. And then if it does a good job there, then when it passes to the small intestine for the next phase of digestion activity, everything goes so much better. So it's fun to focus on the stomach too, because a lot of pets really do have stomach issues.
Mm-hmm. And can we talk a little bit about dog versus cat species appropriate diets? We've got some questions there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bit of difference. Cats are obligate carnivores, so they absolutely have to have meat in their diet, but they do also require to have fiber in their diet, because if they were to eat a mouse out there, they would get fiber from the GI content of the mouse, because they will eat that, and then also the fur of the mouse. So they get fiber that way, and they really get a complete diet, because they really eat the whole animal with everything in it. Oftentimes they will leave a kidney or something, but the rest will be eaten. And so if we can mimic that again, it's really important. Whereas with dogs, they're a little bit more capable of handling more plant-based materials. And, when you see a dog out there, they may eat a piece of fruit if it's laying around, right? My childhood dog, she would go sit under the cherry tree and wait for us to pick some cherries for her. So they're a little bit different in what they need. But, in the end, every animal is an individual. And I think we have to, make sure that we watch a little bit and listen to what they tell us, because if you have a dog who's like, yeah, I'm not eating that vegetable, forget it, this is not it, give me meat, I'll eat that, then you have to sort of listen to that. And cats too, I mean, they will also tell you, maybe even more so than dogs, they will tell you what they like and what they don't like. So, as much as they need a certain kind of food with minerals and nutrients and all of that, they are individuals, and they know what their body needs, because the body basically creates cravings for things to replenish what is needed. And animals are a lot better at, they're more connected to that still than we humans.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
And then another question we have that came in was, if they cannot afford grass-fed food for their dog, would it be better to feed conventional meat rather than kibble?
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a great question though. So thank you for asking that, because clearly there's many people who are wanting to know the same thing. So yeah, kibble, heavily processed. I love how Rob said it. What is that? I mean, not with judgment though, because that's the last thing you want, but that's the lowest tier. And so I always support people. I love to meet people where they're at, like what are you doing now? And what are you capable of just getting to that next step? And if that next step is just dehydrated, because that tends to be one of the most cost-effective foods out there. If the next step is dehydrated, where you're adding water or broth to reconstitute it, awesome. So much better than kibble. But if you can add a little fresh meat, and even if it's not organic and free range, it's still fresh food that is species appropriate. So we're still moving in the right direction. And even if you can't afford grass-fed meat's really gotten more expensive, we know recently. Can you do a pasture-raised egg? Can you do a little slab of wild caught fish? Can you, there's other things that maybe if just red meat's really not fit in the budget, you have multiple big dogs. I always get excited when people bring me little dogs that are, 6, 8, 10 pounds. I'm like, woo, they're so cost effective. You can feed them really well.
Totally.
And then people have like free 85-pound dogs and they're like, okay, well, I've tried, but I can't afford it. I'm like, I get it. This is real, this is realistic stuff. I'm just here to support you to, do the best that you can with what you've got now. And once you dig into the first step or the second step, then things may change or evolve in your household or, your lifestyle or whatever, where you can get to the next step. And, and it's fun for people. And then they see their pet responding well and getting more vital. And so it's a lovely process. And so just, everybody take a little pressure off yourselves, just learn and then enjoy the journey as you walk through it with your pet.
Amen.
Yep.
Can I interject real quick
Yes,
on
please.
that angle of Dr. Kangas? It's like cost averaging. So, where if you can't afford organic or above in your meat, you can do organic raw kefir, organic raw tripe. Tripe is another one of those stinky foods that dogs love, full of enzymes. And I can do that in a whole meal. You can also be really creative. You can pick up, tongue, oxtails, things that are cuts that are cheaper. You do not need premium cuts. You should not be giving your dog filet mignon. You should be giving them the worst cuts. That my dog always gets the cuts that are tough, that I don't love. They don't care. They love it. And it's perfect for them. So also, I would like to just bring up one little thing that's a free strategy for and by the way, for your conventional fed dogs, that is real food, having strategies of strong gut health and using ion, you're hedging your bets against some of the things that may be in those ingredients that you don't want. And so to help you prevent your dog from absorbing some of those things, I think that's a good strategy too. I think that's a worthwhile strategy. It's not it doesn't have to be go big or go home. You can go small and do a better job and always improve. I'd love to hear from the doctors on metabolic flexibility and fasting, if we could just touch on that real briefly.
Yeah, I would love to speak to that, and Dr. Odette will probably want to chime in. I actually wrote an article for Animal Wellness last year, I believe, on intermittent fasting. And of course, it's getting a lot of recognition for humans, and I intermittent fast now too. And it's known to be one of the most incredible, easy to use tools to support better health, and just going back to, again, like evolutionary, appropriateness is that we didn't evolve in a world where we had constant access to food and we're eating, snacky things all day long, not to mention the high sugar load and the processed, and, it's a whole nother issue in the equation. But literally, and for our pets too, this has such beautiful purpose, is that when you have a nice window of several to many hours of no food coming in, your body literally, and our pets' bodies, go into cleanup mode. And when you don't have to work on digestion, because digestion takes a lot of energy and processes going on in the body. And so when that is not occurring, the body has more energy to focus on maintaining health and cleaning things up. And so there's a word called autophagy, which basically means that your body is eating up its own cells that aren't good anymore. So you got mutated cells that might be heading to cancer. You have degenerated cells, inflammation cells, etc. When you have periods of intermittent fasting, the body becomes an expert, innate, intelligent, being that it is, getting to clean up any take out the trash from the inside out. And this works for dogs too. And it's really, it's really touted for things like cancer, but any chronic disease, even weight management, autoimmune diseases can respond. I mean, anything can respond. Now, what I would say though is, just like for humans, not every pet should be intermittently fasted or fasted. In my experience, for large dogs, it works really well for the majority, but if there's a specific health problem, obviously there's like diabetes, or the dog is pregnant, or, the dog is really, geriatric or something like that. I mean, there's situations where you don't necessarily want to employ that or be very cautious. But for the average healthy dog, especially large breed, intermittent fasting can work great. For some small breed dogs, it seems like if they have extended periods of time with an empty stomach, sometimes they'll get the little bile vomits and stuff. But you can work with that by slowly extending the window and giving them digestive enzymes and, fun stuff like that. And then there's also just, time restricted feeding, where you can still do 2 meals a day, but maybe you feed them at 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So it's within an 8-hour window, and the pet is still getting a 16-hour fast. So that's a really cool thing. And people can play with that and just go slowly. But I love that Rob brought that up, because there have been studies to show that some of the longest lived dogs on the planet globally are dogs that literally lived outdoors on these, big sheep farms or outside or whatever. And as Odette was saying, A, they're eating dirt and they're getting a great microbiome, but B, they're also exercising, and C, they're not eating all the time. And some of these dogs would eat 1 meal a day, maybe 1 meal every 36 hours. It's like a wolf. I mean, they don't know when they're going to find food. But anyway, it has a lot of purpose for health and longevity and vitality. So it's fun to talk about diet, and then it's fun to talk about actually withholding food for a little bit is also an excellent health strategy in the right situations. So,
and variety as well. That wild dog is getting so much variety.
Yeah.
Right? He's a hunter-gatherer.
Yep.
Odette?
Yeah, well said, Katie. Definitely. I mean, just to add, exercise is so important. It's free. We're talking about money and doing things free. Feeding less is freer too. You save some money, because unfortunately, a lot of the animals that I see, they're overweight. And so just feeding them a little bit less, you can save money, and then you can invest it into something else and into improving the diet a little bit. And again, I'm a big fan of, what is the animal saying? What do they want? What do they need? Because, for example, in puppies, as they get like to the 6 month mark, they're like, I don't need this much food anymore. I'm not hungry, so they will skip a couple of meals even, just because they don't need it. So I don't usually get all worried about it, although a lot of people will. I have had some clients who were force feeding their animals because they thought they were not eating enough, and they turned out to be rather chunky.
Wow.
So, feeding them a bit less never hurts, especially if they're not that hungry. Put the food down. If they don't eat it right away, it goes back in the fridge, and they get it served a few hours later again to see if they want it or not. Obviously, there are some of the animals that have GI upset, and that's why they don't want to eat, which that's a different story, and then we have to address that. But a lot of animals, they are overfed and undernourished because they're not getting quite the right nutrients. So in a way, their cells are starving, and so by switching to feeding a bit less but higher quality of food can make a big difference for to recharge the battery of the cells so that they can work better and do their job.
I love that strategy.
Well said.
Great. Well, we're come to the closing time here, but I know that we could all spend so many hours on these topics, and I'm just so grateful that you all joined today and shared such amazing nuggets of wisdom. Everyone that registered for the webinar, you're going to receive a thank you that's going to connect you as well to Dr. Katie Kangas and Dr. Odette Suter if you want to connect with them more, and their resources. Obviously, they are a wealth of knowledge here, and just you have both been so helpful. And Rob as well with Gussy's Gut. So that all of those details will be in the thank you, and everyone will also receive a recording of the webinar as well. So that will be coming to your inbox. And any other closing remarks from you all?
Thank you. for doing this, for allowing us to share this information to your amazing audience. And, you know, it's an honor, and thank you for all the people out there who are doing such amazing jobs for your animals. You are changing not only their world, you're changing the entire world, you know, one animal at a time. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And same from here, you know, ditto, really well said. It's such a pleasure to be in this discussion, in this you know, the building awareness for everybody, which is impacting not only pets, which we're all here for and our hearts are all with all the time, but the humans that are attached to them as well. You know, the ION product just extends amongst all of us and the planet. So it's such a beautiful thing to be a part of. So it's an honor for me to be here too. The one little tidbit I thought I might squeak in at the end here is we talked a lot about putting fresh foods in the diets and going more fresh. And I feel like maybe I should just add one thing, that if people are moving from a commercial diet to something fresh, keep in mind though that it needs to be balanced. So, you know, we talked a lot about adding little additions and toppers, but the one thing we do want to avoid is somebody just going, okay, well, I'm going to ditch the commercial food and I'm just going to do my own. And you can do that, but you definitely need recipes and educate yourself on how to do it right. Because if it's long-term, then, you know, unbalanced is also not ideal. So we want to pay attention to that. So I just thought I'd squeak that in just to support people in their journey of checking all this out.
I'm so glad you did, Dr. Kate. I'm so glad you did, because I've got my wheels turning and it helps, you know, it's just really, this is to help encourage, you know, a different way of thinking and a different approach to our pet food. And then we'll be sending out resources so you can follow up with these wonderful vets here to learn more about how you can do this at home for yourself. All right. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. And thanks to this group of people watching. You guys are I would say on the upper end of awareness and intention. And so it's a pleasure to be speaking to you all. Yeah, it's a real pleasure.
Yes. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.